The construction of the St. Pius X Annex building began in 1959 in preparation of the opening school year. The Annex building is now occupied by 2 social studies classrooms and the offices of the men and women who keep the financial aspect of St. Pius running like a well-oiled machine. However, in its early days, the Annex served a different purpose. In 1959, it housed religious sisters who served as teachers for the school. Until an unknown year, no student had ever entered the Annex. However, it is rumored that in 2024, its earliest inhabitants still occupy the building, taking a particular liking to the basement.
My name's Scott Taylor, and I'm a faculty member here at St. Pius.
When did you first start teaching at St. Pius?
1978. It's kind of a complicated story. I'm not Catholic and I don't come from Missouri. My friend Marty Zelenko had taught here a year earlier. They needed an English teacher, and I was looking for a job. And my dad had just died, and I didn't want to be someplace living on my own. I could come down here, I could live with him, we shared a house together, and have a job. And I wound up loving it because of the community at St. Pius. The community, at the beginning of my time here, there were a whole bunch of teachers that were in their 20s. We weren't married. We just did everything together. We came to all the sporting events. We did all the school events. It was just kind of like our social life, and that really drew me in. And the community that's always been around St. Pius has been the thing that I've liked the most about it. When I first came here, the Annex was a convent, and nobody ever went in it. It was forbidden. There were never a whole bunch of nuns over there, 6, 8, something like that. But anyway, the only times I was ever there, I worked during the summer helping clean the school, and a couple of times I would go over there to help them move things. And oftentimes when I would tell people I had been in there, they're like, "Oh, you went into the convent?" It was just something that hardly anybody did. I remember going over there once, and it was really hot out, and the nuns were all walking around in sweaters and stuff because they had the air conditioning jacked down to about 50, and all the windows were like frosted up and everything. That's a memory I have of the Annex. I remember being intimidated by some of them. I'd never been, like I say, I'm not Catholic. I had never been around nuns. A couple of them weren't really nice, but on the other hand, some of them were really nice, and I got along with very well. For instance, Sister Genevieve was really nice. She had a really dry, sly sense of humor, and she got a kick out of Zelenko and myself. And so, it was kind of a 50-50 split between being kind of intimidated by them and having good, just kind of like friendship relationships with them. Well, I'm sure somewhere out in the world I'd seen nuns, but I don't think I'd ever talked to one. Troy, the town I grew up in Illinois, was a strong Catholic town. But I remember a priest. I don't remember nuns, and I've never remembered any of the kids I grew up with talking about there being nuns. It's just stuff you'd see in movies. Nuns tended to be portrayed in movies as either being tremendously saintly or like mean nuns. Oftentimes in comedies, the nuns would kind of be mean, And the nuns here, they weren't necessarily mean. They were older I was a kid. I don't know, my relationship with them may have been completely different if I would have been more experienced and been around longer. I'm just going from my memories of it, about them being intimidating, you know. And the kids would back me up. The kids that were here would back me up. They would say some of them were nicer than others. Okay, first of all, I was the first person to go over to the Annex to teach. Somewhere in the 80s, they turned the Annex into the we care for the hospital. And for a while, we had kids that went here that had also been at the we care when they were little kids. And then the hospital built their own child care, and we got the building back. So in '97, I believe it was, they moved me over there to see if it would work, because I had control over my classes. They didn't think I would mind moving over there. I was in the room where Mr. Weilert is, but it was much, much smaller. It was the old chapel. And my desk was back up against the wall, and the kids' desk came right up to it. I taught the whole year from my desk. I couldn't stand. We were so locked into that room. Kevin Halley, I think, was one of the students in those classes. And Dennis Moore, I believe, also was in those classes. And the next year, they decided it worked. They started knocking walls out and creating bigger rooms. And I think Kristen Chibody came over the next year. For a while, Mrs. DeCoste taught in what is now the conference room over there next to me. But I was the first one over there, and of course was there until I retired 4 years ago. Annex. I loved being over in the Annex. For one thing, it was perfect for my film class to be away from everything for noise. Secondly, you had control over the heat and the air conditioning over there, and it was quiet, which is once again perfect for my film class. I liked being away from the alarms, the bells, the lockers slamming and everything. I loved being over the Annex. I think I had the best room ever, and was really happy to be over there. Then at a certain point we stopped using bells between classes, but for a while I was the only person that I kind of had to go by my watch. This is what, October the what, 29th, 2024. I was in there last week subbing in my room. And yesterday I was subbing for Mr. Weilert in his room.
What did you do when you worked here at St. Pius?
I taught PE and I coached. I started coaching volleyball. I was the first coach in girls volleyball, girls track, girls basketball, and softball. And taught PE. Wasn't in the chair at that point in time, so. I was in the third graduating class, so I graduated in 1965. I don't know, all told, between being here as a student and teaching and coaching, it's 50 plus years. Student-wise, back in the day, my parents, Pius had not been open very long, and they just said, you're gonna go to Pius. So, rode the bus, came over, didn't have all the cars that were available today, so rode the bus over here. I lived south of DeSoto. I was a St. Rose kid. Came over. Then when I graduated from college, I applied here and a couple other schools and was hired here to do the PE classes, which are now, today, are called wellness. Oh yeah. When I was here as a student, I don't know that there were ever any students that went into the convent, because that was where the nuns lived. Yes, once it was no longer the convent, it became a daycare. And it was a daycare that was associated with the hospital. So the hospital used the building to start a daycare for their employees. So nurses, doctors, anybody that was on the staff at the hospital that needed daycare could get their kids or little kids over here. So I had two nieces that were in the, it was called We Care. And so I had two nieces that came here. A lot of the people around here, a few of our teachers, I think eventually that had little ones, had their kids here. I don't know what it looks like now. At that point in time, we had classrooms up on the third floor. If you went down this hallway all the way to the end, Julie Workmeister, Mr. Workmeister's wife, had class in there. Then Taylor had class in there. And then there were two classrooms upstairs. And this main area that you walk into were offices, the college office. Marty Zelenko started that. He had his office over here. There were different offices with like development and stuff. The basement, what I would call the basement or the lowest level, the auction used to use, I don't know if they still use it, when they started the auction, even when the daycare was there, that was used. Gals that were involved in the office, which were a lot of older ladies whose kids had gone to Pius, they used it, they made things, they set things up for the auction, they made decorations, they put baskets together to auction off. So that was that, plus storage down there. Probably not in the day when I was a student. You wouldn't have been particularly close. You always had ones that you probably enjoyed their classes maybe more, depending upon what kind of classes you liked. But as far as being close to them, probably not. Now over time, some of them, because when I came back to teach, then they were here, then you developed a little bit different than you would have as a student. I think she was still teaching, and then she became, I don't know what her official title, or if she even had an official title. She did some of the bookkeeping. She ran the bookstore where you could buy art supplies, pens, pencils, those kinds of things. She did that kind of stuff. Just a real good soul, just a good person.
Right on set.
Kevin Halley, I'm the Director of Technology. I also teach coding and robotics. It's my 17th year here teaching at Pius, but I am a class of 1998 graduate.
Well, that was actually one of my first questions. How long have you been working for St. Pius?
17 years as a teacher, 21 years overall as a coach. I spent 4 years coaching before I started teaching.
How long have you been working in the Annex, like your classes?
I've been, teaching in the Annex for probably about 7 years, maybe 8. I'm not entirely certain when they built that basement robotics lab.
What was the Annex when you went to school here?
My freshman year, it was a daycare. It was We Care. It was contracted out, so there was actually a playground in the back where the outdoor classroom is now. And then, but my sophomore year, the school took it back over and started turning it into classrooms. I think I had a math class in there my sophomore year, and then English and math from there on out my junior and senior years.
What do you teach in the Annex?
I teach one section of coding and programming, and one section of robotics.
If you had the choice to move your class to the main building, would you, or would you stay in the Annex?
I don't really know. I've taught in both, and neither one bothered me. So all my stuff's over there now, so I don't really want to move it back again. So I would probably stay in the Annex. It's just another room.
All right. Have you ever experienced anything weird in the Annex?
Yes, but probably not in the way that you're insinuating. I don't think anything is ghost related. I think weird things happen. I think people always say lamps get turned on overnight or lights get turned on. I think lights get left on and people think they turned them off. So In that sense, I don't think anything weird like that. It's nice to have those stories, though, and to kind of play into them that Sister Genevieve is over there, but I don't know that there actually is Sister Genevieve over there. In case there is, I don't really want to make her mad, but I don't really think that there's anything over there.
Do you have anything else to add?
No, it's just, it's before 1995. It was just a convent and a daycare and all kinds of things. And since then, it's just been so many different variations of walls being torn down and added and re-added, then torn down again. And I can only imagine what it looked like in the 60s and 70s when there were actually nuns living there. I'm not, it's kind of getting to the point where there's very few people around that even remember what that was like. So it's just to see it grow, even in my sense, since 1994 when I was a freshman, to see what it is now is just kind of a huge change.
Thank you so much.
No problem.
My name's Amy Atzert. I am the Director of Events here at St. Pius X High School. I'm also an alumni. I graduated in 2001. I have been at St. Pius working, this is my 4th academic year. My job is the Director of Events, which means basically that I'm in charge of all fundraising activities that we do here at school, plus all the extracurricular fun things. I'm also in charge of Parent Club, which is our parent-based volunteer organization where we get everybody to kind of help out with all the activities that happen at school. So yes, I have always worked at the Annex, and I work in the basement, so it's kind of lonely sometimes. I do. I enjoy it. It's quieter. And then again, I love my coworkers, so we have fun over here. So, my experience working in the Annex. So, due to my job, I'm here at non-traditional hours. So I'm here a lot at night. It gets a little scary because you've heard the rumors of it being haunted, and so sometimes it gets a little scary at night. But overall, it's been a good experience. It's fun. I don't know. I don't really believe that it's haunted, but I did get something donated to me one time for an auction, and it was a nun doll, and it was very scary, and she does live in the basement with me, so she's always there with me. When I was here, there were no sisters here. All I really remember is I had algebra class in the top floor where Mr. Weilert's class was. That's where algebra was, and then Mr. Taylor was up there also for film class. So that's what was there whenever I was here.
Awesome. All right.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.